So, can you talk about what first sparked your interest in space?
One of my first memories as a kid it was of looking up at the moon in the night sky. And for me, when people ask me what first sparked my interest, I say, well, it's been a lifelong passion of mine. I cannot remember a time when I haven't been curious about space. I remember being at school and learning about the planets and discovering the planet Venus. And it was Earth's evil twin with this thick, inhospitable atmosphere. And I was just fascinated that such an alien world could exist in our own solar system. And for me, space exploration is as much about a search for meaning and philosophy as it is about science. And that search for meaning has stayed with me. That wanderlust that comes from looking up and being inspired about the universe above us is something which has stuck with me since being a small child.
So, I know that you feel quite passionate that people should have more of an interest in space. And you say that people don't really understand, or a lot of people don't understand, how much space actually shapes our daily lives. Can you talk a bit about that and maybe give us some information about what we don't know?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's STEM illiteracy within the media, which means that science stories, particularly space stories, don't get communicated in a way that they should do because as a journalist, and I'm a journalist myself, you have to have a legal qualification, but you don't need a scientific qualification. You don't need a mathematical qualification. So often the space story kind of gets jumbled up between scientists doing great things and then the general public finding out about them. But we live in a space age. It is not the space age we expected in the 1960s when people dreamed of flying cars and jetpacks and holidays to the moon. Instead, instead of a jetpack, we got Deliveroo and Uber Eats and all these apps that have transformed life on Earth. We dumped into cyberspace instead of outer space. But our world of today is transformed by space exploration. Not so much by humans going into space and conducting science to improve life on Earth, everything from cancer research to medical experiments and studying how to farm in a different environment, to satellites in orbit around the Earth, which are transforming life on Earth. So everything from farming, how we can irrigate the land better, how we can monitor the land, to security, borders control. There was an incident in Nigeria where some girls were kidnapped a few years ago by Boko Haram, and it was satellites in space which was able to help hunt for those girls. We live in a space age. From, if you want to call a car or call food, you're relying on satellites in space. And yes, there is kind of that argument that we'd have got all this great technology anyhow, but space exploration has accelerated that, because when you strive for something great, something impossible, there's a trickle down effect which benefits all of us. But if we are to succeed in exploring space, then space exploration and space technology has to benefit all people.
Right. So, I know that you've written books. You've written 3 children's books and then a book for adults. Do you feel that in the 2 groups, the adults and the children, do you think that they're naturally drawn to different aspects of space?
Most kids have an interest in space, and it's great to be able to tell the story not only of how we got to now and what's happening now in space exploration, but pretty much for the first time in a long, long time, space travel, space exploration, what's going on in the space industry is no longer looking back at what we've achieved, but actually saying, look what's happening now, look at the future. We're creating this new commercial space age, the entrepreneurial space age, as I call it, and all the incredible jobs that young people could grow up to be, everything from a teacher on the moon to a space miner, things which sound like science fiction. Science fiction is becoming a reality right now. So I think for kids, it's easy to spark their interest because they're the ones who are going to be carrying on the baton, and they're the ones going to be creating this future and the future we're talking about now. So it's really exciting to inspire children. One fact I love is that the first person to walk on Mars, and this again sounds like science fiction, but the first person to walk on Mars is likely a school-aged child right now. So our Mars walkers, the first human beings to set foot on another planet, are among us already. And I love that, and we've got to inspire them. And then adults, I think, particularly with the last year, people have been searching for meaning in their lives. Lockdown's given us a lot of free time, a lot of time to assess the situation in all of our lives. And I think more adults have been looking up. And I think if we're to succeed in exploring space, it needs to be for everyone. It can't just be for a niche group of people. So I don't care whether you're 6 or 66, you can still be inspired by the possibility and the wonder to come from space exploration.
So I know that you're really passionate about commercial space exploration being open to more people, more accessible. How hopeful are you that will happen sometime in the near future? Or do you see a sort of timeline or a progression that would move into that?
What I would say is in terms of commercial space and the commercial space industry, change is happening much faster than you realise. Some people might be shocked by what they're seeing now, billionaires going to space and all these other companies disrupting the space industry, but it's been bubbling up under the surface for quite a few years now. But if we are to succeed as a species in exploring space and becoming a multi-planetary species, then space needs to be for everyone. It can't just be about a niche group of people. And what's so exciting about commercial space is that before, space exploration, you were really defined by the country you were born in, so only certain countries really had access to space, and fewer than 600 humans have been to space, and they were mostly white military men or people with an engineering background, so they represented a niche type of person. So what we're seeing now with commercial space is that different types of people can access space, people who might be artists or musicians or from all kinds of backgrounds. Yes, we have seen wealthy go into space, but what we are also seeing is organisations such as Space for Humanity, which I work with, which has a goal of democratising access of space. So opening up those space flights, those commercial space trips, and providing them to people from all walks of life, because you're going to care about space more if your neighbour's been to space or someone you know has been to space. You're going to relate to the subject more. So we need non-profits, we need organisations, and we need the commercial space industry to allow people from different backgrounds, different to that currently involved in the space industry, to access space, because those fewer than 600 human beings who've been to space, when they went and they look back at the Earth, they were changed. Alan Shepard, the commander of Apollo 15, the first American in space, he stood on the surface of the moon. He was a hardened military personnel and he cried looking at the sight of the Earth. And if we've sent military personnel and engineers to space and they've come back artists and priests and with a newfound love of planet Earth, what happens when we send a different type of person into space? What kind of game-changing thing are they going to do from Earth, from that shift in perspective that they gather from seeing the Earth in that unique way?
So we know in recent news Richard Branson became the second oldest person to go to the edge of space, and we also know that there's plans for Jeff Bezos, who I know that you've worked with, to go to space. When you read this news, what do you think it means for research, for interest in it in the news, and do you think it's a good thing for that to be happening right now?
It is incredible that more people are able to access space. And I think we need to be clear with this kind of like billionaires are going to take over space. Space is really, really hard. If it was easy, we'd already have countries extending into space, but we don't. The International Space Station, the only permanently crewed presence beyond Earth, requires a collaboration between 16 different nations. Countries like Russia and America, which might not get together or get on well together on Earth, but in space they have to work together. So to say a billionaire is going to go to space and take over space, well, it's not possible. It's too hard to do. Space is bigger than any one individual, any one country, any one company. So it's great that more people can access space. More companies can now access space. It's no longer the preserve of governments, and it's no different to what we've seen throughout the history of exploration. Governments generally go first, and then private entrepreneurs and explorers follow. But what it means is a reduction in the cost of access to space, because private companies can take risks that governments can't. The cheaper going to space becomes, the more people who can get not only themselves to space, but ideas and experiments. And in the same way that the internet in the 1990s was free for everyone to access, and companies that people couldn't imagine at the time changed the world. Google, Facebook, Amazon, you name it, they were internet companies because people with an idea were able to access that platform for free. When we reduce the cost of getting ideas to space and people to space, there are going to be companies that I can't imagine yet, that you can't imagine yet, which are created as a result of that. So as soon as space becomes accessible to all, as soon as the cost of getting to space comes down, it will create a future that benefits all of us here on Earth.
Throughout your career, have you had the chance to work with people who you considered heroes when you were younger, and what were those experiences like?
Yeah, I have been fortunate enough to work with people who inspired me. I've worked with Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, of course, from Apollo 11, both of them, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, so many people, so many astronauts. But when you work in the space industry, you get to know astronauts because that's the industry you're in. But to me, there's so many heroes which, you know, the astronauts are just the tip of the iceberg, or tip of the arrow, so to speak, in terms of what we do in space exploration. There are thousands of people who make space exploration possible. So in an era where we kind of like idolize celebrity, I don't like to do that. I think we should celebrate all the incredible hardworking people. So to me, it's just an honor to work with people who are passionate about opening up space exploration, about creating this new future, about taking life on Earth into space, something which sounds impossible, but it's reality. So yes, I've been fortunate enough to work with big names, certainly within the space industry, and some celebrities within TV and stuff. But for me, it's just a privilege to work with so many different people who are just so intelligent, so smart, a million times smarter than I am, who are changing the world. And that's what excites me. And also to have the opportunity to tell their stories.
Great. So I know that there's a gender gap in STEM fields. Can you talk from your experience why you think that is and what we can all do to sort of bridge that gap?
Yeah, there is a gender gap. I think it's changing. Certainly when I was studying at the University of Leicester, I think there was 70 on our course and maybe 10 females, so studying physics with astrophysics. It is changing. Obviously, representation matters. You know, there's that phrase, you need to see it to be it. But also we just need to nurture people's passion and people's talent. And I never had anyone tell me I couldn't do something. And that's what we need just as much, because I think particularly with girls, they don't have the confidence in the same way as boys do. So they think, oh, I can't do that, I'm not good enough. And I just think we need to let people know that, yes, you can do it. What can't you do? You know, the sky is no longer the limit. Human beings have walked on the moon. This decade we'll see humans return to the moon, and you can be a part of it. There's nothing stopping you, only your imagination.
So you studied physics with astrophysics at the University of Leicester.
Yeah.
What was it that appealed to you about the university and about the city of Leicester?
So I studied physics with astrophysics at the University of Leicester, and I remember coming here on an open day and got these buses from the university campus up to Oadby where the halls of residence are. And I just loved Victoria Park. I shouldn't say that as the reason I picked Leicester to study at, but I just loved Victoria Park, and the thought of being a student and being able to hang out in that beautiful park, it really appealed to me. And then, of course, there was the Leicester Space Centre and all this exciting possibilities and opportunities that could come with that. And then the physics department, the physics and astronomy department at the University of Leicester is really world class. And I think I was sold on the city. I was sold on Oadby as a place to stay as a student. It's rather fancy. And I was sold on the university and the course. And the course is incredible. They do space research at the University of Leicester as well. And it just felt like a place where my space dreams could potentially come true.
So when you were a student, did you have the chance to explore different areas in Leicester? Did you maybe go to, around Belgrave, or what we would call the Golden Mile?
Yeah, so I was here in Leicester for 3 years, and then I came back. I did a postgrad in London, and then I came back for another year to work from Leicester and around the Midlands. And I got to know Leicester fairly well. I mean, I had so many friends here, so many incredible memories, everything from nights out to just being around the city, going to the Golden Mile during Diwali and getting lots of very fattening but very delicious sweets, and just, becoming an adult. I grew up in the city. I came here when I was 18, and it was a place which changed me and set me and many of my friends on a path to our futures.
So I know that you were part of a series called Contact, and it was basically exploring the possibility of whether aliens have made contact with Earth.
Things you do.
There is this huge fascination with, do aliens exist? Have they contacted us? Are we able to contact them? Why do you think that people are so drawn to that in particular? Why do you think that it's so fascinating for people? And how would you ask that question of whether that life exists beyond Earth?
Why do I think people care about the possibility of life beyond Earth and whether we're alone or not in the universe? I think it's many reasons. I think sometimes people don't trust the government, so they think the government's hiding aliens and they're covering things up. I think sometimes it's a case of science fiction and the influences that science fiction has had on society. You only have to go back to 1938 and this War of the Worlds radio broadcast, and people really thought Martians were invading the Earth. So that's kind of influenced our idea of aliens and life beyond Earth. But then there is some science behind all of this. We are this one planet in this one average solar system, which is one of trillions which exist in the universe. When you look up at the night sky, for pretty much every single star you can see, there's at least one planet orbiting around it. There are trillions of planets out there, more planets than stars. And then even within our own particularly average solar system, there are candidates for where life might exist beyond Earth. So we think there might be simple life or past simple life on Mars, perhaps even today. The clouds of Venus may even have some sort of microbial life in Enceladus and Europa, which are these frozen moons of Saturn and Jupiter, which have highly probable liquid oceans underneath their icy surfaces. We think there might be some sort of very simple alien life there as well. At least it's the condition for alien life there. And that's just a few candidates within our own solar system. So the notion that we're alone in the universe, I mean, if I gave you an answer, I'd just be guessing, because we don't know either way. But I hope we're not alone. I think I'm pretty sure within the next few decades, we'll answer that question of are we alone. It will likely be some very simple life that we find elsewhere within our solar system. But if we're able to prove that life elsewhere in our solar system evolved independently from Earth, then that means there were two genesises in one solar system. And we know there are trillions of solar systems out there, and that's a game changer. It just means the possibilities of life elsewhere in the universe are huge. And then with that comes the potential for maybe intelligent life. I like to think that we're not the most intelligent life in the universe, but you just don't know.